And lastly, before I get to the episode, I want to talk about Miro since we're talking about free agents. Miro, aka Rusev, has requested his release from AEW. I wrote an article. It is on Patreon. Hold swig of coffee. I think Lucha Doncic says swig of coffee for mud butt. I guess that's what he says. Oh, you guys got to watch me spill my coffee on live YouTube. Anyway, in breaking news, former WWE star and current AEW talent Miro, formerly known as Rusev, has officially asked for his release from AEW, according to Fightful Select's Sean Ross Sapp. Miro, who has largely been absent from AEW in 2024, made the request after months of frustration stemming from creative disagreements and limited in-ring action. He last competed at World's End, defeating fellow malcontent Andrade, which in hindsight is pretty hilarious. And that was in December of 2023. And although he was sidelined for longer than expected after that event, I think he was hurt. He has reportedly been healthy for some time. Despite being cleared to compete, Miro has not returned to AEW programming at all this year in 2024, and we're in September. Sapp's also reporting that there may have been plans to use Miro in the AEW All-In Casino Gauntlet and possibly with Jon Moxley earlier this year, possibly have a feud with him. And so, yeah, it's been wild. His creative. So let's go to his creative struggles. So Ibu provided some context on this, and I kind of put this in this section over here. And despite his reputation as an in-ring powerhouse, Miro's run at AEW has been hampered by creative disagreements. According to Ibu of Wrestle Purist, Miro became increasingly difficult to work with on the creative front, often challenging pitches with questions like, how does this benefit me? And then what? So him saying that is very old school mentality. This very old school, this very like 80s, 90s. And he always kind of had that about him. He's a very old school kind of attraction, and he has that same attitude. Expressing skepticism over the long-term direction of his character. This mindset reportedly frustrated AEW's creative team, preventing Miro from becoming a consistent presence on television. In fact, Miro only wrestled 7 matches in 2023 and a total of 11 matches since December of 2021, a far cry from the regular competition fans expected from him when he first debuted in September 2020. You guys remember his debut? He come out looking like Thick Shady. He was wearing like a plain white tee, and he had bleach blonde hair, and it was like short. I was like, "The fuck are you doing?" And he was like angry gamer Miro. He was an angry video game player. I was like, what a terrible thing. And then he went away for a little bit and came back as the Redeemer. Now the Redeemer ruled. We'll talk about that. His infrequent appearances and the failure to come to terms on storylines reflect a broader issue that has followed Miro throughout his wrestling career, a strong protectiveness over his presentation and booking. Ibu added further context to Miro's frustration, stating that although Miro was initially enthusiastic about joining AEW, his mercurial attitude towards creative pitches caused tensions in the company. It was blatantly obvious that he and AEW weren't working out, and I think his release request should be granted, Ibu noted. Miro has always been protective of his presentation, and whether that stems from his experiences in WWE or lack of respect from Tony Khan remains unclear. So a while back, Dave was talking about former WWE talents coming into AEW and kind of seeing AEW as Bush League, like as second tier, and not wanting to do jobs because they don't want, because they didn't want to do jobs to second tier people, right? And they saw themselves as bigger stars than they really were, right? Despite the fact that AEW had bigger stars than them, Jericho and Moxley and other folks willingly doing jobs, they were like, well, I'm too big to do this. Okay. Ibu also suggested that Miro's mentality may have played a role in his struggles to find sustained success in both WWE and AEW, and noted Miro's cautious approach to creative direction might have stemmed from his past experiences under Vince McMahon's leadership in WWE, where Miro was often given storylines he felt undermined his character. Well, that's a fucking understatement. And I'll talk about that here in a little bit. And I want to hear from you guys about what you think of this last section that I'm about to read off that I put. So please go to the Patreon article and throw down a comment there. I would greatly appreciate it about what you think about Miro's future and where he should go next. Tony should absolutely give him an unconditional release. This is me. No questions asked. The guy is never there, and him showing up on WWE television will not alter any business or perceptions one way or the other. And I really believe that. So he, come out earlier this week that Tony Khan released Phoenix from his because he could add injury time to Phoenix's deal, but he decided not to because Phoenix was always a team player, which I think is admirable. He could do that. He has chosen not to. If he could do that to Miro, right? Miro is under contract till 2026. He's got the guy's rights for a long, long time, but he's never going to use them. And the only reason why he would hold him to the deal is for pettiness. And that doesn't do anybody any good. If he's just holding a guy out of spite, that makes you look bad, that makes him look bad, and nobody wins in the situation. Just let the guy go. And if he does go back to WWE, which I think that everybody would think that would be the case, it doesn't do anything to your business. It doesn't hurt you in the least. Just get rid of the guy. Okay? Like, let the guy go. And I'll be honest, look, when WWE was holding guys hostage, like when they were holding FTR, who was malcontents, and Brody Lee, rest in peace, who was a malcontent, he wanted out of his deal, asked for his release. Now Brody Lee he's not like a total malcontent, where he was actually really happy when he got to AEW, but he was unhappy in WWE over his booking and asked for his release. Because he had been unhappy for a long time, and they did not. They made him wait out his contract. Okay. And they've done the same thing to several others, and we criticize them for it. I think AEW deserves that same criticism if they hold on to Miro after asking for his release, especially when they're not, like, it doesn't do any damage to their company. The only reason they're holding on to him is out of spite. And not only that, they're being sued for misrepresenting the independent contractor law, for misappropriating, or not. Well, I can't think of the word, but they're being sued by the Tate twins and Kevin Kelly for treating them as independent contractors when they should have been treated as employees. Well, this is a similar situation. You're holding this guy not hostage because you're still paying him, but you're not letting him go and grow his brand because you don't like him. When really you should just get rid of the guy because it doesn't do anything negative to your business. So, as of now, it remains unclear if Miro's request for release has been granted or if WWE has expressed interest in bringing him back. What is known is that he's under AEW until at least 2026. Could add injury time to that because he was also injured for a while. Could he return to WWE? Well, Triple H likes reunions with disaffected former stars. He took Andrade back quickly, and I think Rusev would be someone he would be interested in. He was once a big star there before Paul Heyman and Vince McMahon turned him into a cuck. You guys remember that, right? He was in that feud with Bobby Lashley, and Lana was making out with and stripping Miro of his manhood on live television because it entertained Paul Heyman and Vince McMahon. Would he want to go back to that? Well, look, he probably has a really good relationship with Triple H. And he would probably hope that they wouldn't do that again. And I'm sure Triple H would be like, hey, we're never doing that to you again. If I were him, I'd be cautious. I would be leery, but look, he wants to be big time. If WWE isn't interested, what about TNA? I don't see him being interested in TNA, considering he thought AEW was beneath him. But if nobody else wants you, and here's the quote that I really love from JD: some money is better than no money. Hopefully the knowledge that he completely overplayed how valuable he was to AEW, and seeing his now ex-wife gallivanting around in a bikini with a certain former Universal Champion on Instagram has humbled him a bit, and he will want to prove himself to promoters. TNA is a place where you can rebuild your career and up your stock, but you have to be willing to eat shit for a little bit and work your ass off. If I were TNA, I'd be cautious. If Miro wanted to come in as a heel of the month against Joe Hendry later in the year, I think it would be worth the look if you're willing to do business. So let's get to the chat. What do you guys think here? Let's see. Heard Miro has a bad back. Can't keep his shoulders down for 3 seconds. Yeah, I like that joke. Io says, I know what you're about to say, and as the answer is no, he didn't live or boost his stock in AEW, so what would be there? He didn't level up Yeah, well, and that's the thing. It's like, yeah, he had a terrible run in AEW, and it was revolved around his bad attitude. Um, but after being humbled for years, would he be willing to do business? That's the big question. Or is he the same guy? That I don't know. But AEW tried multiple times with Miro. Brought him in as thick, shady video game nerd. Didn't work. Brought him in as a redeemer, and that did work. That was great. He was over like crazy. But then he didn't want to do jobs, and he had to go away for a little bit. And then they brought him back again on Collision, and he was around for a little bit. He didn't work out again. He ends up getting hurt, and then he has not been back since. So I don't know. I don't know. Lucha says before he goes back to WWE, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't be against a Bronson Reed, Jonah like run in TNA before he goes back to WWE. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's what I'm thinking, right? Because if you're TNA, you're not going to, like, TNA doesn't really sign these guys to long-term deals anyway. They sign their homegrown guys to long-term deals, right? Like Nick Nemeth still isn't under contract. He's just on a per date um, deal. Same with Mid Cardona and other folks. So, yeah, I don't think that they would bring him in long-term, but I could see bringing the guy in. Joe Henry's the champion, and you bring him in like heel of the month, get him a title shot, let him beat some couple jobbers and mid carders, and then heat him up for Joe Hendry for a main event TNA Plus special, and then you send him packing, kind of like what we did. Jonah was in for 6 months. He got built up for a Josh match that had that really awesome match at Hard to Kill. And then he had a feud with PCO that was awesome. The PCO feud ruled. And then he was gone. He went back to WWE. I think him doing so well in WWE or in TNA and in New Japan, he worked his way back up to a WWE deal. I could see something like that. Billy says, WWE held Mustafa Ali hostage too. I hate saying the word hostage because they're being paid. And they're being paid very well. If they weren't being paid, then I would say yes, hostage. I just that is like I don't like to use that word for people who are wealthy. So, like I've seen NFL players and NBA players say they're being held hostage by their teams. It's like, bro, you're still being paid, and you're being paid handsomely to not do anything. Hostage is not the word. There are real hostages out there currently in the Middle East, and they're not being paid a dime and they're being tortured. Okay, so it's a little bit of a different thing. Io says even TNA willingly let Giselle Shaw go. Yeah, they couldn't. They had an impasse. They worked it out. She came in. She kind of did a job to Heather Reckless, a weak job. Hey, do you guys think that Giselle Shaw is going to be in that new Deonna Purrazzo faction? I do. I can see that. But and then Lucha Doncic said God's favorite wrestler was a cool gimmick. Yeah, that was awesome. So yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen with old Miro, man. I hope the best for the guy. I was a big fan of his early when he first came to the main roster, and I actually saw him wrestle John Cena for the U.S. title at WrestleMania, and he came out on a tank. And I was like, this guy fucking rules. And then it's just been one thing after another. He had I was not a fan of the Rusev Day gimmick. I know a lot of people were. I was not, but he got it over, and then they ended up not doing anything with it, and then they turned him into a cuckold, and then the cuckold thing kind of killed him. But the Redeemer, I really felt like redeemed his career. It turned him back into a monster, which is what he should have always been. He's very much like a 70s, 80s like heel, like he looks like Ivan Koloff a little bit. He's got the big barrel chest. The guy's shredded and jacked and the whole deal. Good wrestler too. He's had some really good matches. So yeah, we'll see.